We're going to start out with a little bit of music, and then we have some amazing talent that's going to be sitting here talking to you all, and then followed by a little bit more music. So right now I'd like to introduce to you my good friend Matt Sucich, who's going to amaze you with some amazing talent.
Sucich.
Oh, I'm going to amaze you. Watch out. All right. So this is a night about songs and songwriting. And that's a thing that I do. James asked me if I would play. I remember very specifically, I don't know if he remembers this, but when he asked me to do this, he was like, could you play some stuff from your new record? I have a new record coming out next year. So I'll do a couple of those and then I'll do an older one. All my life I've lived 10 years behind. I hope that don't mean that I live until I'm 109. I'll bet those stars that have long since died never counted on shining after life. You've got your questions and I've got mine. What you call freedom, I call it a lie. But you got your cards and you're gonna play them right. You're betting on a little afterlife. Say what you like and do what you like. Follow a leader straight into the light. But you got your cheeseburgers and your apple pie. You can wash it down with the afterlife. They got your hands in your pocket, and they got your favorite pocket knife. They got your hand-me-down locket and your firstborn child. Just read over these documents and sign on the dotted line. You can pick up your things in the afterlife. Thank you. Are you amazed yet? What are you worried about? Listen to the waves, there's no better sound. And keep your feet on the ground. What are you worried about? What doesn't matter where we go? I get the feeling that we'll never know. It's better just to let it go. It's love and be kind, and peace may find you. Ooh, give a little love and you'll receive. Well, you can get lost inside of your mind and have yourself an existential crisis. Yeah, open up a bottle of wine, get lost inside of your mind. Well, think about a past life. Who had the last laugh? What was your life like? Did you have a husband or a wife? Or did you die alone? Ooh, give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Ooh, give a little love and you'll receive. Ooh, give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Ooh, giving love can set you free. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, well, I got my hopes up, but then they fell. Not so much that I had to call it quits, but far enough that it broke my spirit and I had to pay to get it fixed. And I didn't have insurance. But that's the thing about modern times, you can fix anything with the dollar sign. A broken heart, a broken soul, a broken phone. Oh no. Ooh, give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Ooh, give a little love and you'll receive. And I was unhappy when I finally spoke. My brand new spirit didn't get my jokes. I said, what do you call the church on fire? He said, what? I said, holy smokes. That's the thing about losing things, you know, sometimes it's hard to get them back. And sometimes we focus a little too much on just trying to make them laugh. Yeah, we try to make them laugh. And it's the journey, not the destination. I read that on the wall of a subway station. And so I wrote it down, and I got back home. And I let that train take me for a ride. Ooh, give love and be kind, peace may find. Ooh, give love and peace. Ooh, give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Ooh, giving love can set you free. Give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Give a little love and you'll receive. Give love and be kind, and peace may find you. Giving love can set you free. Giving love can set you free. Oh, giving love can set you free. Ooh. Thank you very, very much. My name is Matt Sucich.
Yeah.
Did that somebody have a question? Did you want to know my name? Was it funny how I said it? No?
How do you pronounce that?
Oh! Sucich. Sucich. Adam. I fucking love that, man. Yeah. I didn't prepare anything to say because you're going to hear people talking all night, so I'm not going to say a bunch of shit. But I think James is great. James Campion. Wonderful human being. And very kind of him to ask me to do this, and I was honored to. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what these guys have to talk about. Beats me. This is an older song of mine, but it's I've been part of this little Underwater Sunshine family for a long time, and almost 10 years, which is fucking mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's great.
But this is one that I know that certain people like a lot, so I'm going to do this one. My name is Matt Sucich.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have, oh, real quick story. I forgot I wanted to mention this because it's crazy to me. I love a coincidence. You ever meet someone who doesn't like a coincidence? No. It blows my mind. I know some people. And I didn't realize this at all until this morning, but I released a record that I don't talk about much anymore. It was an old record, 10 years ago today, on this very stage.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that nuts? What are the odds of that? Yes. But so in honor of that, I brought some of the stupid CDs that I don't sell anymore on the merch table. So if you want one of these old records of mine, I don't think it's bad. I think it's a good record. I just wrote better songs since then and a lot more of them. So there's never time to play them. What's that? Oh, it's an album called Layers.
That's a great one.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Anyway, if you don't have it on CD and you want it, I brought some tonight. And I will sell it to you. I also have some vinyl records of my new stuff. I will also sell to you. Just corner me. I'll sell you all the things. I'll give you want this shirt? We can do the shirt. I'll throw it in. Anyway, here's a song called Fire on Bowery. My name is Matt Sucich. It's the little things about the time we had that kept you in the back of my head. This is not a healthy way of feeling. Do you see me how you saw me when my back against the reckoning and the walls were closing? There's a fire on Bowery, and the lights won't even turn on no more. They might as well let the city die, since the place we went in the summer that night is gone. It's no mystery what went wrong. Hell, our love, it was an atom bomb, and the weight I hold was my own damn fault. And now everything I've already done, I've got to do it again. There's something about a master plan. Now there's a fire on Bowery, and the lights won't even turn on no more. They might as well let the city die, since the place we went in the summer that night is gone, gone. But what am I supposed to let go? My pride or my soul? Who am I telling that hasn't been told? So tell me now, is this how it ends? The weight on my chest and the voices inside of my head. There's a fire on Bowery, and the lights won't even turn on no more. They might as well let the city die, since the place we went summer that night is gone, gone, gone. Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here.
Oh, please do. I will talk over to you.
Some more time for Matt Sucich. I think we're going to move this to the side while I chatter, so maybe I'll do it. Anyway, we should all recognize Matt's birthday was yesterday, Matt? So
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Matt. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Alex. I'm pretty bad. Alex of the rescue. I think I'm supposed to use this mic, right? Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is James Campion, and I'm a writer. And writers don't get the chance to do this, so thank you. We just sit in hovels and stare at things. Occasionally people publish these things, and then we hopefully get paid for it. But so I wrote this book. You know, it's very interesting being in this room. And some of the people that are going to be on the stage tonight, and some people that came with me tonight, and friends of mine, were in this room in February, early February of 2020. So last show I saw live, and it was Matt Sucich on this very stage. Now Matt did me the honor of playing tonight. He was absolutely fantastic as always. I loved it. And right after that, as we know, the world closed, and then I had all this time on my hands. And at the time, and everybody knows this, working on a book with some guy named Adam Duritz from Counting Crows, and it's taken a while, and we're working on it. But I had a full. I didn't know how long we had, right? At first when it happened, it was like, oh, it could be done in 6 weeks, 3 months, 4 months. So I just started working on this book, and eventually pitched it to my publisher, and they said, sure, keep going, no one's here. We're all home because there's nothing going on. And so that book became Take a Sad Song, The Emotional Currency of Hey Jude. Thank you. And the reason why I think this is a good thing to do tonight is all the voices you're going to hear on the stage tonight with me are in the book. Because I wanted it to be, I was alone like we all were in our homes, but not really. There's a connection there. And I got to, the one great thing about doing a book where you interview professors of different disciplines and songwriters and writers and Beatle writers and biographers, they're all home. They're not doing anything. The songwriters, unfortunately, were all home, and everybody was available. So we all, started discussing why, and I used Hey Jude as a basis, but why do songs affect us? Why do they mean so much to us? Why do they continue? This is 54, 55 years ago when Paul wrote this song, and the Beatles recorded it. And it's still, and I know it's the Beatles, and I know it's Paul, but still, think about it, 55 years. When I wrote about the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's for the Aquarian Weekly, back in 2017, the last paragraph in there I wrote, can you imagine a magazine in 1967 writing about a piece of music that was still relevant that was recorded in 1917? And that's the magic of the Beatles. But that's the magic of song. Songs last. And they affect us in so many ways. So, again, it wasn't so much me writing, it was reaching out to friends, really talented friends, insightful people, and having them tell me. So it is a real honor to be on stage, and I want to share that live with you guys tonight. So it'll be kind of fun. The first person I'd like to introduce is a really good friend who I met, thanks to Adam, at his place back in 2017. And the first words he said to me was, "How do you write a book?" And I thought he was joking, but he was serious because he was working on a book. And I'm very proud. He's one of the great singer-songwriters. What an emotional cat who his songs capture that. So when I interviewed him for this book, he was one of my favorite people to talk to because during the pandemic, and I'll let him tell you about it, but we talked so deeply, right, Stephen, about how hard it was to write songs then, to understand what was going on around us, outside of us, what was happening to all of us. And he did it, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Stephen Kellogg. The other guy I wanted to introduce, I met for the first time today, but I interviewed him for the book, obviously, on Zoom, where we all were in 2020 and 2021, and, emailed, and I love his work. I binged his work, the way people do with Breaking Bad. Thanks to Tim Riley, who's a great Beatle writer and also a professor up at Emerson College, who said, have you read Dreaming the Beatles by Rob Sheffield? I said, no. He goes, get it now, before you finish this book. And I think it's the best book. Honestly, I read about 20 books about the Beatles in some form, or Paul McCartney over that research of this book, and Dreaming the Beatles is one of the greatest books on the Beatles. It's my favorite. He's also written wonderful books about music, an excellent book which he totally challenged me today at lunch. He wrote the Bowie book in 2 months. God damn it, I hate him. He's a brilliant writer and an even better guy. Rob Sheffield from Rolling Stone magazine. He's also way, way taller than me. Of course, everybody on the stage is going to be taller than me. Somebody get a picture of that later, it'll be funny. And last but certainly not least, you know him as a singer-songwriter for my favorite band, Counting Crows. And, but I know him as my co-host of Underwater Sunshine podcast, which is one of the most fun I've ever had working with anybody doing anything in my professional life, and we hope to get back to it someday. And also a writing partner of mine, Mr. Adam Duritz. You want to say something?
It feels like we're about to do a game show.
Yes, here we go. First question.
All right!
I've been wanting to dinosaur on like that for so long. Okay.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Thank you, Stephen, for giving me a reason to do that.
That's what I'm set him up, knock him down.
All right, I'm in trouble.
What a
Okay,
great
already lost this thing. So, guys, I just wanted the first question I guess I have to ask. First of all, thank you all for being in my book and speaking very eloquently and honestly about songwriting and what it meant to you. So I'll just go right down the line. Adam, first, when I said I was going to do this book, and you probably thought I was mad. No, actually, you told me it was a good idea. Thank you for saying that. You and Immer were like, hey, Jude, that's a good idea. So I took that as a positive.
I'm an encouraging kind of guy. I actually thought it was insane to write a book about one song. But I'm here to encourage people.
Thank you.
You don't want to be the guy that told Van Gogh not to paint a painting.
Yeah.
They're not really selling well, Vince, so...
I've done it over here.
In this case, no, I was kind of knocked out by the book, too.
Oh, thank you, man.
Because there's, you know, I'm a Beatles fan, but there's a lot about the narrative I didn't know. Which the book sort of revealed. And that story, especially around Paul driving out to John's house to see Julian. And it really knocked me out, just how much that song, it's because it's a song that's involved all of us, all our lives, but how much it involved all of them too. Not just Julian, but John, Paul, how much it's about all of them.
Yeah, and I love the fact that one of the quotes that Adam had in the book was that Sean, in 1975, became the Beatles' son. And Julian kind of got lost in all of that. And, you know, because of the divorce and everything. But I think it was so touching this year that Julian came out with a record called Jude, owning up to that connection. And even used the writing on the cover of Paul's handwriting that he bid on anonymously in the early aughts. They put the handwriting of the Paul's studio notes, and Julian bid on it so he could have it. It's Uncle Paul. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. And I remember one thing about that Rob said that I repeat all the time is that it's very odd for a song. Paul wrote this for Julian, but he's also talking to his friend John about you have found her, you can go out and get her, and all that stuff. It's this conversation between two adult men. You always found that very fascinating, didn't you?
Yeah, Paul McCartney's least favorite topic is other men. He just doesn't have any interest in men. Paul just doesn't write songs about men, unless it's the Jailer Man and Sailor Sam. They're the only other male characters in a Paul song. Imagine what a terrible sailor Sailor Sam was. McMillan and Kellogg takes place in the desert, and that's where Sailor Sam lives. Imagine what an absolutely crummy sailor you are when you move to the desert. There's some horrible maritime disaster in Sailor Sam's past. But like, the only topic where Paul ever wants to talk to a man in the song is about this woman that he is under.
Like in She Loves You, I found it to be a lineage.
Yeah, it's the topic that, you know, famous story that you discuss in your book, that John heard this song, he heard Paul sing it, he knew exactly, he felt. He knew exactly that Paul was singing to him. This is a song about the kind of, connection between friends, a very specific Paul McCartney kind of connection.
Yeah, I wonder, is it difficult to write? Well, here's one thing. I know Eric Hutchinson said, it's difficult because it's written in the second person. But it's not polemic. He's not preaching anything. He's just giving advice. Is that a tough thing to do, write in the second person like that, or is it easier to write in the first person, do you think, Steve?
I'm not sure I can answer that question, but giving advice is like my MO. So I would say no. I try to write songs that don't give advice because I'm always like, and here's the moral of the story. So I'll tell you this, and this is I feel like this makes me unpopular out of the box, but the trick about the Beatles for me has always been one of connection. Like I love these songs, I recognize their greatness, okay? But I also just my favorite Beatles is when they take on sort of an everyman kind of like, hey, we're just guys, because they always seem like superheroes, and I feel like the fact that he's speaking so conversationally in this song, I like that a lot. That helps me relate, to the everyman aspect that I really crave in Beatles songs. And I don't know. Maybe I won't say anything else. Is that okay? Are we okay? Are we okay?
Fine. Yeah.
Well, they all live in a yellow submarine. It's it's not just one guy. It's like we're all living in a yellow submarine, which has got to be crowded and cramped, but still, it's something they all do together.
Yeah,
it's not as deep as I'm stretching it.
You're really turning me around on this, Adam. Yeah.
It's the everyman thing. Yeah.
The everyman. Yeah, exactly.
Which is true because in the case of Sgt. Pepper's, there's this great psychedelic, commentary. All those songs are about, there's a meter maid in there, little girl runs away from home, guys going to work, hanging out with your friends. There really isn't a lot of kind of deeper. Another thing is Dark Side of the Moon. It's just regular stuff they're talking about in there. Breathe, money, day-to-day stuff. They're doing it in an artistic, creative way, but it's not, it's not fantasy. It's real world stuff.
Yeah. There's just I just find it so endearing that it's just a guy talking to some people that he loves and saying, hey, it's gonna be all right. And that to me is there you go. I mean, as cool as the cerebral stuff is, that's the stuff that makes me personally, I don't know if that's what you were. I'm not sure what you were asking, but that's just something. Thank you both. Representing the small minority of folks here and how they feel about the Beatles is Stephen Kellogg.
So, Rob, what was you told me today at lunch that you wrote small pieces about the Beatles and then eventually wrote an entire book about them. But what's the constant fascination? One of the great quotes you have in my book is, the Beatles didn't happen, they're happening. There's something very current about
They're always going on. We were talking at lunch about my nephew, he's 15. He was showing me he built the Lego Yellow Submarine. And he's like, okay, this one is John, and this one is Paul. This is Jeremy, who's, the little green nomad. And I'm like, you're explaining to me who the Beatles are? I was like, we are totally related. My sister is laughing at this. It's the fact that kids now hear the Beatles and they think they invented the Beatles. And they're right, they did. It's a thing where there's some music that needs to be passed down from generation to generation. You play this for your nieces and nephews, your kids, and you say, this, you will like this, check this out. But there's other stuff that they hear without you, and it does not need any push at all. Giles Martin, who is the Beatles producer, he's the son of the great George Martin, who produced those records. Giles Martin produces the new versions. And specifically, he said, well, you can imagine, my wife is completely sick of hearing about the Beatles. We do not play the Beatles at home. We do not play the Beatles in front of our kids. Giles Martin was telling me, his daughter, when she was 10, she said, oh, Dad, check this out. This is going to blow your mind. It's the best song ever. She played him Come Together. And he said that his wife immediately gave him an accusing look. And he said, she did not hear this from me. And songs like she did not hear this from me. They're actively trying to hide the Beatles from their kids. It can't be done. Kids are always discovering this, and they really are reinventing it over and over, constantly learning about the Beatles from people who just started listening to them a few years ago. Something that was beautiful during the pandemic, there were a lot of Beatles stan Twitter posters who are like teenage kids who are trapped in the house with their dads, getting into the Beatles. They start posting all this stuff about the Beatles that I had never seen. I'm learning stuff constantly about the Beatles from people who were nowhere near born when I started listening to them. And that's the most beautiful thing about the Beatles to me, is that they keep on happening. They do not belong to the past. They never have and they never will.
Yeah, Jack here, who does yes, yeah, please. Jack, who does the Beatles Earth, we were just thanking him on Twitter, and he does a podcast called Here, There, and Everywhere. Rob and I are in different episodes, and he's in his 20s. And he, you wonder how they hear this stuff, but this is my point at the very beginning, and that is the music is really what carries it. Because the Beatles were this seismic thing that happened in '64, we all know the story, JFK is assassinated, and the Beatles come in '64, and they reanimate America. There's this whole thing. They invent the '60s in a way, and they take their generation with them. But that means nothing to kids now. It's the songs. And I'm reminded of something that Adam told me from my book, too, and that is, it's great you have lyrics and themes and all these things, but melodies, they come from nowhere, and they're magical, and when they do work, and when Paul makes them, and then you said to me, it's just, they just keep coming. The bridges are double, and they have hooks upon hooks upon hooks. And that's what I think makes them last, or great music last. Not just the Beatles, but great songs.
Yeah, melody's a weird thing, because you have your day to get lyrics from. You have the life you live, the life you see around you, and, you certainly put your own original thought into it, but you have all this basis, all this stuff to make the bricks that make up your lyrics. Melody, you got to pull it out of thin air. Or pull it out of someone else's song. But either way, let's just say up front, you want to say you pull it out of thin air, and he, more than anybody else who ever lived, pulls them out. I mean, someday you have to go look at this. Go look back at a catalog of Beatles songs. Just a list of all the records. And see how many songs you can hum to yourself right now when you go through them. Because this guy, these two guys, but Paul with the melodies, wrote 50 or 60 songs that 60 years ago that we can still all hum nowadays. We might not remember all the words, whatever. We probably all do, because that's the kind of geeks we are. But I mean, you could pull, that just doesn't exist. There's nobody else doing that at that level. Dylan, you mentioned this in the book. Dylan, he's a great songwriter, but it's not the melodies. Some of them are great, but Paul, and that comes out of thin air. It's incredible to me. He doesn't get enough credit for that. It's the joy that brings to all of us that have spent our lives humming them and singing them. I ran into him once at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I love
years
this
ago.
story. This is good.
It was the night he got inducted, and it was a very hard night for him. Obviously, Linda had either died right before that, or it was the year anniversary of when she died. John had gotten, the Beatles had gotten into the Hall of Fame, but as far as individuals, John got in before Paul. There was a big sort of...
Way before, yeah.
Yeah, and there was all this sort of talk about how John was the serious, the good Beatle, the real artist. Paul was writing When I'm 64, and to sum him up, which is so unjust. And you could tell he was in so much pain and frustration and anger at the ceremony. He didn't take part in it much, and I'm going to get off the story for a second because I want to tell you this, because he wasn't, at the end, they always have everybody go up and try and play together, and they ask me, they ask Paul, and he doesn't go up. I didn't go up. I don't know why I keep mentioning myself here. It's really not an important part of the story to anyone but me. But at one point, after playing something else, I think Billy Joel started playing either Hey Jude or Let It Be, and I can't remember which one it was, and then Paul went up and joined him. They had two pianos, so he could sit down at the other one. And when they were done with that, he walked up and they huddled on the stage for a minute, and they all talked about something. He couldn't tell what it was. And he turned around and he just goes, 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, now go cat go. And they just kicked into blue suede shoes, and he looked like he was 20. It was like he looked really old that night and really beaten down. But then it just dropped. He looked like a kid in the cabin club. He looked like he was 20 years old. And all the years went off him. I went to talk to him later on. I mentioned that when we made Recovering the Satellites, we had this song called Catapult. And it opens with this Mellotron line. Do, 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 do. Now I'm going to get it wrong. Do, 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 do. Something like that, you know? And then the album starts. And the whole time through the making of the record, we were thinking, God, you know, this weirdly sounds familiar to me. This melody sounds so familiar. And this went on for months while we were making the record. And finally, when we were near the end of the record, someone sat up and went, oh God, it's the beginning of Venus and Mars, the Paul McCartney song. And it is the first thing on that record, and it's played on the same fucking instrument. It's a Mellotron flute. And it's exactly the same melody, so we had to change it a few notes to make it different. And when I sing it now, I have no idea which one I'm singing. They're both in my head. But, you know, we almost stole this, and when I told this to Paul, the story of how and he was like, oh my God, it's been bothering me for years what that song, what he knew, Catapult. He's like, it's been bothering me for years what this reminded me of. I'm like, yeah, it's you. And he goes, wow. And it was but that's not even a song. It's a Mellotron line that is so hooky. You know, most of us hope to have one or two songs or record that have memorable melodies. The Beatles had every song on a record. And you hope that you have a good chorus. Maybe you just pedal your way through your verse and you have a good chorus and stick a bridge in there that's just kind of going between two notes to give you a chance to write a bridge. With the Beatles, it's just like, okay, the verse comes, that's a great verse. Oh, that's a really good chorus. Hey, that's a great bridge. And then they just play them all 4 times. They just keep going. No one else plays a bridge more than once, except the Beatles, who play them 3 or 4 times every song because they're so fucking good. And then they do this all in 3 minutes. It's like a treasure, a wealth of this genius that they just left for all of us to. That's what it's impossible to deny, which is why, as you said, it is not something that happened. It's still happening constantly. You know, boy, that's it. Love a good tangent.
I miss those. I always say that the funny thing in my book, I mentioned about 2 pieces of melody that Paul subconsciously, according to musicologists, I don't want to say lifted, but was inspired by. A lot of people were shocked by that and said, oh my God, it is Hey Jude. The very first notes is from this John Irving 1916, I think, or 1906 liturgical piece called the Te Deum. And it literally opens with bum, 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 bum. And then that's it. Just those notes. And then it goes into more solemn, where Paul takes it up because Paul's a student and a lover of rock and roll music and soul and pop, and he does the Paul thing. But that's a subconscious thing because he sang, I found out later doing the research, he sang in an angelical choir when he was about 8 or 9 years old, and most of the musicologists I spoke to said there's no way that wouldn't have stuck in his head. It sticks in your head. And when you're writing a song, and I found this out later, Paul wrote the song in like 48 hours, which is freaking amazing. And, but Adam's talked about that too. He's taken different times to write it, but you said Long December came to you almost immediately in structure, and it's beautifully structured. Oh, why don't you tell me at lunchtime what you told me? You guys say it.
Well, great time. I hope it's okay to say, but I said I'm a little shy about talking about the great Na 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 song in front of the guy who wrote the other great Na 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 song.
Said to me, Adam, he said, Long December is like in the top 3 of Na 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 songs.
It's like the Iliad and Odyssey of Na 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 songs.
But I go 4 times around. That's the most I can get out of it. It's 4 times around, and it's maybe about a minute of Na Na Na's. They go 19 times around the full thing, and it's 4+ full minutes of Na Na Na. But you can get away with that because Paul can sing like Paul.
Yeah.
Which none of the rest, because Paul can sing like Little Richard.
Yeah, he's screaming like through like the last several minutes in a really cool way.
Yeah.
I
can't do that.
Those Na Na Nas, they create a community though. You hear that song in a room this size, or a room any size, and total strangers are your best friends with your arms around each other doing the Na Na Nas. A lot of Na 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 songs aspire to that. I know of 2 that actually pull it off.
Years ago, in one of the concerts after Immer joined the band, he's up at the front of the stage, the second chorus, and he's like, no, I'm doing this. And the audience starts up. You know, they all join in doing it too. He's been doing it ever since. And I said to him, like, after the show, I'm like, what the fuck's up with that? what are you doing? Like, I don't mind them doing it, but why are you doing it? And he says, I don't know, man. I couldn't stop myself.
And he's never been able to stop himself, which I suppose is a good sign, because like he's the last person I would think would be up there doing that, but Immer is right there. Sap.
That's his part. That's his part in the song.
Yeah.
He's dedicated to it.
I love it.
So I have to ask you, because I want to get you to play a song. That's why I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay. I'm
I
ready.
don't want you to talk about it before you do.
Okay.
And that is one of the things, and I mentioned this in my introduction, when we did the interview, you were so honest with me about where you were. You were kind of stuck for inspiration. You write the most beautiful songs about your family, about your experience, about your lineage. Objects in the Mirror, by the way, is a great book. Get that. That's the one that we're talking about. Yes, please. Objects in the Mirror, which is a wonderful record. But 2020 was about a lot of things, like global things. And you had a hard time kind of connecting to that.
Yeah.
So how did you do that? Because you did.
Well, I guess. I mean, I didn't really, I just felt like the stuff was too big. Everything felt so huge in 2020. I mean, right at that moment. And I never want to write, I don't want to write something because I'm supposed to. I don't want to be like, wow, I'm really experiencing a lot of anxiety, I better write. Like, that's just not, I feel like it weighed, stuff weighed too much, and I know there's a bunch of songwriters in the room and writers, and so I had a hard time sort of turning all the feelings of that moment into productive, something you could use. Because usually there's that great Anne Lamott saying, if something bad happens to you, put it in the art. And that has always been that's been really useful. Just like put it in the art. Someone breaks your heart, all right, you write it. I didn't feel like 2020 was, good for that. I just couldn't. It was all about like just trying to. It was survival mode,
Well, not bringing it back to my book, but in a way.
I appreciate the question, but I'm like, yeah, what are we talking about?
So one of the
my writing in 2020, is that why you guys came here? Thank you.
One of the McCartney biographers said when Paul uses the word song as a metaphor, he's through screwing around. That's like the thing that saved him when his mother died. It meant, it got him, it made him fall in love with Little Richard, and Elvis Presley got him out of Liverpool, met John Lennon, made him a big star. He created Paul McCartney through music. So when he wrote Hey Jude, the first lines in what I titled my book, Take a Sad Song, is more important for him, and then make it better. Yeah. He could have said anything there, but the songs, using song is what you're saying, put it in the art.
Put it in the art. Can I ask you a question here? Is that all right for the author? Yeah.
Sure.
Did you know that you were going to choose Hey Jude, a whole book about one song?
Are you doing this for your father-in-law because he asked me before this?
No, but
how good is that?
That's just one of the many ways we relate to each other. My father-in-law. Yeah, no. But I mean, did you obviously the Beatles, did you know it would be that song? I mean, was that because of that line and the moment in time that you decided to write this book? Tell us.
That was later on, but because it seemed odd during 2020. That's all they kept talking about. 1968, when this song came out, and I dedicated an entire chapter about everything that happened that year. And just a quickie is, Martin Luther King is assassinated. Robert Kennedy is assassinated. There are riots in the streets. It's the bloodiest year of the Vietnam War. Kids take over Columbia University. They shut down Paris completely. There's a huge worker strike. De Gaulle has to flee the country. The Russians, invade Yugoslavia. It was a huge deal. The whole world was kind of coming apart. And here are the Beatles, sort of the center of the world, in an artistic sense, communicating. So that came for me later. I learned that stuff. But for me, the big thing with Hey Jude is, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this evening, and connected to the Underwater Sunshine Festival, which, by the way, is in this room in a couple of days. It's going to be great. Everybody should be here for that. Is what I wanted it to be about a song. That was my first thing. And I'm only the 11th guy to write a book about a song, so that's kind of cool in a way. But it's you don't just write about the one song, you write about everything around it. And for me, the reason why I picked Hey Jude is when I was a little kid, I was 5 in '68. I remember my earliest sentient memory is singing the Na-Nas to help me fall asleep when I had a nightmare. So I didn't know who the Beatles were. I didn't know who Paul McCartney was. That melody just stuck with me. But that's not something I would remember at 12, 15, 20. But in my mid to late 20s, whatever the hell I was, in 1989, when Paul played Madison Square Garden, Flowers of the Dirt tour, he never played Beatles songs for years. Couple, like yesterday. This is the first time he played like a lot of Beatles songs, so it was weird being in a room with a Beatle playing Beatles songs. But when he did Hey Jude, that was a different level. It was a very spiritual, I call it in the book a secular gospel song. And I was on the side of the stage, so I got the full scope of, 20,000, whatever it is that fits in that joint. People singing this. And that's when I remember being 5 years old. So I always loved that song because of that. So when I was going in my head, my little Rolodex, what song would I want to write about? That's that one.
You knew you wanted to write a book about one song?
I did.
Okay.
There's like kind of an inspiration for me. Like this guy just inspired me today by writing the Bowie book in 2 months. I'm sorry, yeah?
I know back to when you were 5.
Do I remember back then?
So when you were 5, you were like, oh yeah, that's the song.
Oh, yeah, no.
No, you didn't know it.
Did I intimate it? No. That was my inspiration.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, ultimate. I bounced around different songs. I wrote this essay a couple years ago about Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is another song I absolutely adore. I actually shared it with you, Adam, and one of the things that Adam and I talked about in the podcast is how it goes, like, jumps an octave in the first 2 seconds of that song. It's amazing. It, like, hits you right in the face. They're in your face. So I love that, and how that captured the zeitgeist of the Depression, and how film worked, and how that music has lasted. So I just wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find out from people like you guys why this works, why these songs work. Not just Hey Jude, but any song.
Yeah.
That lasts.
Yeah, don't ask me.
That's why you're the writer.
I was going to say there's an interesting thing in reading the book that really knocked me out, and I think it's because of a number of things that have gone on in the last few years. There's a big narrative around the Beatles of all the aggravation and the abrasiveness and all the things, how much, there's such a narrative about how much they hated each other and how much they frustrated each other and what a dick John is and what a dick Paul is and all this stuff. And it's all from a distance, because I don't really think we see a lot of it. Most of it probably comes from what we could see of Let It Be when it was first released years ago, the splintering of the band. But when Peter Jackson made the documentary last year, I think it was last year, the Get Back thing, the chance to spend, I don't remember how many hours it is, 9 to 10 hours, 8, 9, 10 hours, with the Beatles, just kind of hanging out with the Beatles, with these 4 friends, and to experience them that way, and it showed to me how much overplayed this whole thing about how much they disliked each other and all the fights, because you see the fights in the thing, and they're the same fights we have at our rehearsals. They're not the gigantic things we thought they were. It really isn't. Even the thing with George isn't. I was like,
the love is so clearly on display as well.
And that comes out in the book too, which is a big part of the book, is how much they all love each other, how much they're all so happy when they get this song. Because I'm saying this doesn't mean you can keep a band together, but it's not the toxic thing we all thought it was, especially when you see this film. I don't know if any of you watched it. It's incredibly involving. At some point, we watched it over 4 nights, I think, the 3 parts, and sometime in the middle of it, I was sitting around, and Zoe asked me, what are you thinking about? I was like, I was just thinking about these friends, and it was making me smile. I guess I really miss them. I just wish. She said, who? And I thought, oh my God, they aren't friends of mine. I was thinking about the Beatles, because we're spending these nights watching this show, and it's so intimate, and you're just hanging out with them really in a room, and I felt so close to them that I was sitting around one afternoon just having this sort of like whimsical kind of wistful moment, just thinking to myself about somebody I missed. And I wasn't really identifying the feeling until she asked me, and I started explaining it. I realized, oh my God, I'm thinking about these people I've never known. And I guess I didn't meet Paul. But either way, thinking about people I don't really know, and it's them 60 years ago anyways. They don't exist, and it's a very, very powerful film that way, and it really brought a lot of that back to me reading the book too, because it's so much of what's powerful about them. The quartet, just these four kids who go through all this stuff together, who really love each other, who make unbelievable music together. And it's this false narrative, it just, between the book and the movie, the Peter Jackson movie, in the last couple of years, it really shattered all these negative impressions that I had about the end of the Beatles, and all of them, really. Watching it, I was just like, oh, this is nothing. You think that's bad? Paul talking to George, and George saying, I'll play whatever you want, just tell me. And I was like, that's not being mean. That's not mean at all. That's just rehearsal. I mean, which it really is, because there's a lot of times, sometimes you want to coddle people and support them and make them do well that way, but a lot of the time, it is human nature not to put your best effort forward all the time. Not everybody is driven. And sometimes you need to put a boot up the ass of people, especially in a band, because art is not the place to do compromised half-ass work. You want it to last for 60 years? You need Paul. You need Paul to kick your ass sometimes and tell you that's not fucking good enough. Because sometimes it's stressful making music, and you do this half-ass shit, you just want out of the pressure. You just want to be away from the people who are telling you to do it better, and you'll go, oh yeah, that's good enough, I like that. It's not good enough. And you meet a guy like Paul who tells you, no, it's not good enough. I can play it better than that, because he can play everybody's instruments better than that. And it's not being mean, it's helping you to be great. That's how you do it. That's how you do things that people remember. You know what I remember from 1968? Fuck all. I was alive in 1968 too. I don't remember shit from 1968. Nothing that happened that year, and a lot of shit happened that year, made that big an impression on me. I wasn't old enough to be affected by what happened with Martin Luther King. I vaguely maybe remember Bobby Kennedy. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. I was 4. But I do remember Hey Jude. You know, and now I know about things that happened in 1968. I know about the Democratic Convention. I know about Martin Luther King. I know about, you know, Bobby Kennedy and everything else. But Hey Jude, I don't need to be reminded of it. It's still there. I remember it. I remember it from then. I remember singing the na-nas too. It's like, especially back then, there aren't a lot of 7-minute songs floating around on the AM radio, you know? This is fucking fantastic stuff. And I guess one of the nice things about this book is it really brought back the Peter Jackson thing to me, because it really brought back the camaraderie and the friendship and how close they all were and how great the stuff they did for each other was, you know? And even on this one, yeah, George is having a hard time again. Fucking George. He just wants to play, he wants to play Dan's licks over everything. Tim Vickery's the same way. You know, he just wants to play a lick after every line. It's like, nah, it's not going to work here. It's a different kind of song, you know? And so he's bummed out, and eventually, in the movie, he picks up a 6-string bass. No one should pick up a 6-string bass. But anyways, it works for that moment. But I'm going on and on. I guess I really want to impress upon you that there's this thing about the Beatles that is this warmth, that is in the music, that is in the songs, and that is in the people they were with each other. I don't know about with anybody else in the world. And between your book and the Peter Jackson thing, it really brought those things to me in a way. It was like I got the Beatles back after a lot of years of, you know, it's just the ending is sad, and there's all this other narrative around it. But in the last couple years, we got all this stuff back in a way that's really, really a treasure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say it makes sense to get that from your book too, because that's a lot of you guys know James, but that's kind of your vibe too. I mean, you're someone that goes in and you look for the heart of a situation, and I think that you would pen a book that sort of brings back some of that warmth is no surprise.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that Adam mentioned that just now. It's first time hearing it, because he just read it when he was on the road. I guess my mic is dying here. Because one of the things, and Rob mentioned this to me when I talked to you about it for the book, there is something really sweet about Hey Jude. Not only did Paul write it for Julian, it's a sweet thing. John hears it and said, oh, it's about me and Yoko. Go out and get her. Let her under your skin. Let her into your heart. One of the great things Adam said to me that's in the book is that it's a song about being vulnerable. It's not about a song about what you get or what you give. It's about being open for emotion. All of that is true, but it's the Beatles, as Adam was saying, getting together in a room. I learned this was the last time the Beatles recorded a single, as they did with Love Me Do in '62, just the 4 of them. That was it, for a single. because all the rest of the singles were off albums, or the Ballad of John and Yoko is just Paul and John getting together and putting, for an afternoon. But these are the four Beatles doing one song, and Adam's right. I mean, I hope it comes through in the book, and it did for him, how joyful they were to be together in the room. And what you said to me was, when they did the video, and I interviewed Michael Lindsay Hogg, who directed, ironically Get Back, directed the Hey Jude video, and Peter Jackson talks about, in the film, in that opening 6 or 7 minutes history of the Beatles, how when they did Hey Jude, what he told me was, the Beatles were playing, they were playing live, there were live mics for singing, but they were playing the backing track, but they were playing, and there was an audience there, and he could see on their faces the joy of what it was like in Hamburg, or in the Cavern, or playing at Shea Stadium. Like, that's what they do. This is what they do, and what they're good at, and what Counting Crows is good at, and the Rolling Stones are good at, and when Stephen gets with his guys, when you get into a room and play, and it make magic, or as Adam always does, it's the jazz of it. That's what the Beatles understood with Hey Jude, I think. And you said to me, the beautiful thing about that video is that we get to see the Beatles together, and we're happy. We see the four of them together. Because think about this. For the first time that film, if you have a chance to watch it, go home, it's on YouTube. It played on TV. No one had seen the Beatles on TV playing together since like 65, right? So they broke up, or they stopped touring in 66, but they hadn't been on TV, just the four of them playing. And so people saw that in the midst of this crazy year, and they reconquered the world with their camaraderie. It keeps breaking up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So yeah, that's it. But I wanted to let you take over for that. And say,
Boy, it really helps to have Ringo in your community. If you're going to have, the sound of four boys in a room, it sure makes a difference when one of those boys is Ringo. And he's so phenomenal in Hey Jude. It's kind of funny that Hey Jude, given how famous it is, it's interesting that there aren't more covers of it. People cover famous Beatles songs. That's what happens with famous Beatles songs. There aren't other famous recorded versions of Hey Jude, largely because it's a drummer's song. The other great version of it on record, Wilson Pickett, with Roger Hawkins on drums from the Muscle Shoals rhythm section. It's like you have to have a genius drummer to put that song across, because Ringo is lifting them all up. And something I love about that great video that you were mentioning, this live performance from '68, the day they recorded that, Ringo had been back in the band for 24 hours. Yeah. He had quit the band during the White Album sessions. They talked him into coming back. The next day, they recorded this video for Hey Jude. And you can see, over the course of the 7 minutes, Ringo goes from being, okay, I'm back in the band, I'm here for the boys, by the end of the song, Ringo is the happiest man on earth. Ringo's like, boy, 7 minutes of playing with the Beatles, why did I even quit this band? You can just see that transformation in real time. Just like you can see it in everybody in the room. It's like really a beautiful thing.
And because that song, I call it Comfort and Unity, the first part of the song, the ballad part, is, Paul comforting, and the second part, which we haven't really talked enough about, was the na-nas, a little bit, but the whole idea of, and it was, Michael Lindsay Hogg's idea, and he told Paul, we need the world to sing this. I can't film you guys for 4 minutes doing na-nas. So they bring in all these people of different genders and races and ages, and that was very important. The gender gap was huge in 1968. Huge. And so for that to happen, it was a togetherness kind of moment. And people needed it. And interestingly enough, I think in America, it was played on the Smothers Brothers show. Yeah, and that was not too long after the Democratic Convention. So, things again were, as Adam mentioned, that was a really bad moment of that year. But yeah, that's a great moment in a video. And it shows you what you could do with the visual, how you can bring apart that. I think that was what Paul was going for, but the film just underlines it so beautifully, because it's about the togetherness. So, can I get you to play a song for crying out loud?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All this talk about Hey Jude has made me want to play something that is not Hey Jude. I mean, here's I think the tie-in to the. I'm actually gonna sing the most recent song that I put out, and I think the tie-in is just.
It definitely is a tie-in.
Yeah, it's when you write a song, similar you know, you drew the 1968-2020 parallels of just stuff going on, and I kind of have had this feeling that if you haven't had at least a little bit of a hard time the last few years, you're not paying close enough attention.
Right.
Yeah. And so, you know, you write songs to help. Sorry, guys. Trying to. I don't know. Is that? I'm a pro, guys, and there's no refunds. I don't know. The stool's giving me a little run.
Stage is moving.
It is. So yeah, this is not in any way. It's not my version of Hey Jude, but it's the same impulse of wanting to, you know, write to have a song that can be medicine. Well, I'm born and raised New England, is where I hope to die. Surrounded by a family that I've tried to do right by. And I am leaving them these songs in the best of my intentions, and a million complications that were never really mentioned. If anyone is listening, could you say a prayer for me? I'm asking for a miracle this time. 'Cause the truth is I am barely getting by. In confidence I talk to you about all of my rejections. You led me to the wilderness, but you offered no protection. While you made yourself the victim, I pretended I was strong. We played our part so faithfully and hoped no one would catch on. If anyone is listening, if you hear me whispering, I'm asking for a miracle, it's true. 'Cause the truth is I don't know what else to do. I've been looking for a break so many years. The day that I stop searching is the day I disappear. If you knew what I was thinking, you wouldn't think that I was nice. Is a secret still a secret if you've kept it all your life? Well, I still can't believe you left us. That'll never be okay. There's so much information in the things we do not say. And my heart broke when I was younger, and that ain't nobody's fault. Love is for losing, if it's worth a damn at all. If anyone's listening, I wish I felt you here with me. I'm asking for a miracle right now. And if God is listening, I've been trying to believe. I'm asking for a miracle, I know. 'Cause the truth is I got nowhere else to go.
always a better man for hearing your songs. I feel like a better person.
Good.
I feel better for living.
Good, because yeah, you kind of you write a song like that, and everybody texts you and like, "You okay?" You're like, "Kinda, yeah, sorta, I guess. I don't know, but I'm a better man for being here with you. I wish I hadn't eaten a whole pastrami sandwich before I
like
ate
Katz's.
Yeah, it's really it feels heavy. I don't know. I don't know why. 25 years of doing shows. I'm not sure why I thought tonight I could eat a massive meal before I did this. But I'm like, yeah, I feel it a little bit.
That's a heavy song, though.
Yeah, I needed all the caloric intake that Katz's could throw at me to really fully put it across.
We walked into the venue in, I want to say, Glasgow on this tour, and the catering has made this whole spread of Indian food. And I was like, oh. And oh. Because I really love good Indian food. But I really don't believe it's a great idea before a concert. And yeah, it bore out. Absolutely. I had a great dinner and a very squirrely show.
It's a mistake that you gotta make at least once every few years to remember, oh, this is why we don't eat big meals before shows. Yeah.
Well, thank you anyway for doing that.
Oh, thank you for
yes, come on, yes, thank you. I can't let the rest of the evening go without mentioning Adam's boots. These are incredible things.
They are, yes, I wore them for that one show, and then part of them broke, and I took them in to get fixed, and I had to go away for a gig, and I said to Zoe, can you pick those up? And she said, sure, and then I said, but don't worry, if you can't, I'll just get them when I get back. I was coming in on Saturday, and then on Sunday, I was coming back from North Carolina on Saturday, and on Sunday we were leaving for Europe. And so she couldn't do it, and I was like, it's no problem. And I got home Saturday from the airport, and I walked straight up to the shoe place.
The haberdasher.
No, a cobbler.
Okay.
Yeah, haberdasher is more fabric, not hats really, it's just anything that's fabric for clothes.
Excellent.
We had this discussion this afternoon. Cobbler is what we're looking at here. And the cobbler closes on the weekends for summer in New York. So I was like, but I'm going in my pink fuck. So then I had to call the guy from Europe and say, hey, you're going to have to keep those for 2 or 3 months. I won't be back for a while.
So these are
fucking happy. Yeah, so I played Europe without these shoes. This is my first, the Cap and Tonight are the only performances these shoes have done.
Honor, yes.
I see more in their future. They're fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Maybe this weekend. It's one of those weekends.
You might get to sing.
I ain't got no songs about pink shoes.
All right. So.
I know. Why would you? They're fucking beautiful. It's like I've become more beautiful for these shoes. Yeah, I was far less beautiful when I left for Europe without these shoes, and I looked at myself tonight and I thought, you are beautiful.
Dressing up in pink and white.
There you go. I'm just a bunny costume away from perfection.
I don't know what to segue out of that, but I do. Go ahead, you got something you want to say?
No, I didn't. I was hoping you did.
Yes, I did. So, I know we have a few more minutes, and we're going to have a rousing chorale here at the end, but I can't let it, we'll have a couple of, maybe we have a couple of questions or something, but I did want to mention again how much this means to me. Adam just got off a long, very successful tour in Europe, and this is like, he's only been in the States for a couple of days, and for him to do this, Rob coming here from Brooklyn and meeting me for lunch and chatting and everything.
Was closed too. Cobblers, one job, get out there. We need you.
I'm never getting through this. I'm thinking this entire.
We're left cobless at the worst times.
It's a cobbler's.
Oh man, nicely done. And Stephen, thank you so much. And also, for the people who came, this is a great group because we've got filmmakers here, and we've got, writers here, and the Aquarium Weekly is here, and other singer-songwriters. Matt Sucich, great job again. And I cannot leave the evening without talking about the Underwater Sunshine Festival, which is coming up in one day. 2 more sleeps, right? Tonight and Thursday, as they say. And we're going to have 20 acts here. Maybe Adam can talk a little bit more about this too. They're going to be of all different genres. Stephen has played here before. I know that Matt's playing this weekend. You'll hear, yes, please. You're going to hear from David McMillan in a minute from Fort Francis. So many great, and there's a tireless amount of work that has gone into this. Lindsay and Barbara, who opened up tonight, are fantastic. Big round of applause for them. They deserve it. Other people behind the scenes. I'm humbled to be part of this thing. I did it because I was part of it because Adam and I did that podcast for years. But
you miss it.
Thank you. And then this year I did a little bit more. It was fun to go into meetings and figure out and contact the artists. So I hope everybody in this room comes this weekend. But remember also, the spirit of it is, and I'm not even just saying this just to tie it all together, although this does seem maudlin, but that's kind of what I try to put in the book. What Adam said about, missing the Beatles, he said to me because we tried to record some podcasts, remember, in December, and then the Omicron came. He said, I miss the Underwater Sunshine Fest, because that's what that was like. Hanging out with my friends, musicians, people making music and loving it and inspiring and supporting each other. So that's what it's all about. And that's when I started researching Hey Jude and how Paul went through this really tough childhood, losing his mom, and what John went through, losing his dad and his mom, and everything they went through in their lives, and put it into the Beatles. And the Beatles being, and one of the quotes from my book that Paul says is that he's so glad that at the end of the day, he can look back at the full canon of the Beatles, and probably 99% of it is all positive, forward-thinking kind of stuff. Even sadder songs that are introspective, like what you just wrote. There is a sense of hope there that I think is in all the Beatles songs. So, and that's being part of the Underwater Sunshine Fest, meeting Adam and guys like Stephen. That's what inspired me to write this book, and that's God's honest truth.
Awesome. What do you want? Is there?
Does anybody have any questions? We've got a couple of minutes, so we're going to play one more song, and you can only guess what that is. Yes. Anybody have a question?
I do.
Okay, great.
Okay, so for context, my mom was 17 when I saw her standing there at the email, so she has a deep connection to Paul and the Beatles. And I got to see them at MSG as well when I was 15, and I was part of the Na 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 sing-along. And I completely agree with how you described it. Just like it is almost like a spiritual experience, and it definitely creates camaraderie. I'm wondering if any of you have experienced that with any other song, or if any other song has come close in a live performance of this year.
Yeah. From anybody else that you've seen? I have never experienced anything like that. I mean, I saw The Who play in 1982 in JFK Stadium. It was a giant, like 100,000 people there. It was The Who with Keith Moon, I think Kenny Jones, but John Entwistle. And I was sitting up in the top rafters as usual, and I remember they did Won't Get Fooled Again, and you know that part, the middle part before the drums come in, and everybody was. And that is just a really impressive moment of rock. And I felt that again. Like everybody was from that generation. Everybody understood how important that song was. Everybody was into it to that moment. That's the way I felt with Hey Jude. That was mine.
That's cool.
I remember seeing Peter Gabriel at the Greek Theater in Berkeley, and it was on Security Tour, I guess, his fourth record. And he ended the show with Biko, and the whole crowd was singing it. And one by one, each of the musicians left the stage, and we just kept singing it for, I don't know, a few more minutes after. It went on and on forever, the ending of that, and I just remember being completely enwrapped in it, and like feeling completely swept up in what was going on, and like almost lost, just like. He left the stage first, and then one by one, all the other guys left, and just like, I can't believe we're all still here doing this. Nobody's stopping.
That is kind of a Hey Jude song, because at the end it does this whole outro sing-along thing, which is very cathartic. You have one?
Did anybody happen to see Beyonce on the Lemonade tour. This is at Citi Field. There's about 80,000 people. This is Beyonce's night. She doesn't have to share it with anybody. She says one of her heroes just passed away. Guy that I'm sure many of you have heard of named Prince. Is she doing an easy Prince song? You might think, oh, sing-along Prince song, she's going to do Purple Rain or something. She did The Beautiful Ones, which is impossible to sing. It's very complicated, step by step. It's like 10 minutes long. You can't abbreviate it because it's like each part. And she begins this song, and instinctively I'm like, she's never going to escape this. How can you can't dip your toe into that song. You have to swim all the way across that ocean. When I say 80,000 people singing an incredibly complicated Prince song, and only Beyonce could like lead this sort of like mass wave, it was one of the absolute most like chilling, and also I have to say scared. It's one of those things as a fan, you're a little scared for the performer. It's like, does she realize what she's doing here? Does Beyonce realize that like shutting down her own show? She has more great songs, she has more classics, more hits than she could fit into one show. She's doing this tribute to her hero Prince. She's singing this unsingable song. Turns out 80,000 people know every single, I gotta know, do you want him? Unbelievable, mind-blowing. I wouldn't have thought it was possible, except I was there with 80,000 other people singing this Prince. What I thought of as a deep cut before the show began. A totally universal song. Unbelievable.
Well, I guess I bet everybody in this room has one, and that's kind of what I love though about it. We all have different ones, and some of them are probably pretty weird and might not seem so transcendent to the outside people, but that's the beauty of like when live performance, when a great song is performed at its max level live, that's what can happen. You can make these imprinted memories of a shared experience. So, Hey Jude seems to work for a lot of people, but it's amazing. The Beautiful Ones will be one for those people, and I bet everybody in this room has one that they can think of. So, which I think is the magic of this job that we are in.
Well said. I think that's a good way. I'd like to thank again Stephen Kellogg, my really good friend, who's on tour right now and took a break to do this. Thank you, brother. Rob Sheffield from Rolling Stone, thank you, buddy. Adam, we're going to do some podcasts soon, hopefully, you and me. I got time off. All right. Thank you to Adam.
Can we thank James for writing this brilliant book? Oh my God. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to read this book. Thank you, James, for writing this.
Thank you, Rob.
Celebrate you.
Thank you, buddy. All right, you guys, we'll be signing books. We have books signed by all four of us in the back. There's one's all signed. I have my other two books. Proceeds for going towards the artists and the bands playing this weekend, so please come by afterwards. We have one more treat for you. My really good friend, David McMillan from Chicago, came in early. He's playing with his band, Fort Francis, this weekend, but he came in just to do this. I love him for it. Welcome, David McMillan, and he's going to play us out with Hey Jude. And I want everybody to sing, because I always wanted to be in a group of people that I know singing the na-na, so let's na-na it up, all right?
What? Oh, thank you.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. I just don't want to leave the stage without saying that Rob Sheffield just saying I wrote a great book. Thank you very much.
Well, there's no pressure to play a song
You got this.
that formed James your 5 years old memories and everyone else's life. So yeah, this is super easy. I'm not gonna you guys know the words. So to Rob's point, let's make this a community. Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her into your heart, and then you can start to make it better. Well, hey Jude, don't be afraid. You were made to go out
let under your skin, then you begin to make it better. And anytime you feel pain, hey Jude, refrain, don't carry the world upon your shoulders. Well, you know that it's a fool who plays it cool by making this world a little cold. Hey Jude, don't let me down. You have found her, now go and get her. Remember to let her into your heart, then you can start to make it better. So let it out and let it in. Hey Jude, begin. You're waiting for someone to perform. Don't you know that it's just you? Hey Jude, you do. The movement you need is on your shoulder. Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her under your skin, and then you'll begin to make it
David McMillan right here. Thank you very much, David. His band called
Francis has a brand new record out, and they're playing this weekend at McMillan and Kellogg. Listen, again, thank you guys so much for coming out. Thanks to everybody here at Rockwood, Matt and Alex up there on sound, everybody that helped us out. For Barbara and Lindsay for this weekend. It's going to be a great freaking time. We missed it. This is a great way to kick it off, to get back to see all your faces, people I haven't seen in years. People came in early, like Holly and Frank from LA. I am very moved by everybody who's here, and thank you so much. I love you guys, and I'm going to see you right in here. We're going to move the whole thing in here because another band's playing. So, and we'll sign books and chat with you and the whole 9 yards. All right. So thank you all for coming. Really, peace.
Say what you like, do what you like. Follow the leader straight into the light. But you got your cheeseburgers and your apple pie. You can wash it down with the afterlife. They got your hands in your pocket, and they got your favorite pocket knife. They got your hand-me-down locket and your firstborn child. Just read over these documents and sign on the dotted line.